Oh, hello, Internet. Hi, everyone. My name is Matthias, a.k.a. Major VFX, here at the Maxon booth at SIGGRAPH 2023. We are showcasing all the amazing artists. Well, not all of them. That would take more than a couple days. So we're showcasing amazing artists from around the globe and how they use Maxon 1 to create some of the beautiful things you've seen throughout our commercials and our demo reels and everything else. And I'm proud to announce our own very own next presenter, Chad Perkins. Big round of applause for Chad. Woo!
Thank you. Welcome out, everybody. So today I'm going to be talking about creating a Gothic environment. This is kind of like a two-part thing, which is kind of fun. So I'm going to be talking about my deal for my session, and then in the next hour, Ian Robinson, who is a god of ZBrush, is going to be showing how to make this like awesome gargoyle that I'll be showing in this thing. It was like a team effort. I'll talk about that in a second. So it's with us, and it's going to be featuring kind of like one of those like cool tracks that the kids listen to nowadays with these featured artists and stuff. So we're going to be featuring Forger, Cinema 4D, and ZBrush. Does anybody use Forger at all? Anybody? Yeah, okay, cool. One person, that's good. I'm super into Forger. We'll talk about Forger. It's an iPad app for polygonal modeling and sculpting on the iPad, and I'm a huge fan of it. So I'm going to be focusing on two things here in my session. So we're going to be talking about the Gothic environment, like that's like kind of like the A story, but the B story is going to have like two themes, and one of them is that tools don't matter. Now, like, one of the questions that students always ask when they're starting is like, what software should I use? And the response from veterans, like virtually 100% of the time, is that like the tools don't matter. It's like really like the artist. And like that sounded so good to me that I'm guilty of like just regurgitating that without thinking. When someone says that, I'm just like, yeah, that's right. Tools don't matter. It's people. But then like, I started thinking about it. I was like, tools really do matter. Like to me, tools actually make a really big difference. So we'll talk about that. Tools don't matter, or do they? So like, if a kid comes up to you and was like, hey, I want to learn to express myself, you could say, okay, well, here's like some like sewing needle and thread, express yourself this way. Or you could give them a gun or a guitar or a bunch of different things. And those experiences are all so very different that the tools kind of like dictate the process a little bit. Like the tools inspire and change the direction that things go in. So I find tools to be very impactful for me personally. The other thing is that we're going to talk about like utilizing real-world cinematography techniques. So like that's kind of like my background, which is one of the reasons that my CG stuff sucks more than, I shouldn't say that. It's not on par, you know what I mean. Everyone else is better. I can't think of a good way to say that, but you know what I mean. But like my background, like I have more experience like working on a film set and using cinematography, and I find that like using some of those concepts in CG can really help you push your designs like a little bit further. So we're going to be talking about that. Okay, let's just like jump right to it. Oops, I'm gonna jump into Forger here. We talked about Forger, so I'm gonna share my screen. I'm doing like all these like technical things I've never done before, where I'm like hopping to my iPad in the middle of a thing, and that's work. Okay, there we go. So this was my concept. This is my concept art. I am capable of creating art that looks like better than this, but as I was working on it, and I'm like seeing like where the road is going, and I'm like, no matter how much time I had, I'm never going to make something cool. So that's where I enlisted the help of Ian, and I was like, Ian, I need help. Make something cool for me, please. And so this was like the concept I had in my head, and then I just sent this off to Ian, using a process I'll show you in a second. And then this was kind of like the concept that everything was based on. And I meant to show you the final result before I switched over to this so that you would stick around, not thinking that the end result was going to look like this, but then I forgot. So there's some suspense building there probably. Okay, so I'm going to go to another project that I have, and we're going to talk about some basic things. So like if I'm here in Forger, we have two contexts, up here at the top. It's really hard without a mouse, because I can't see over here. You can't see like where my finger is pointing, but you see right there at the top. You can choose between modeling and sculpting. And so let's say I'm in like modeling. I go to my like objects list right here with this little hamburger icon, and I can click plus, and I can build like, a cube or whatever. And we have like the Cinema 4D modeling engine like built into this app that I have with me on the couch when I'm watching TV or on the train or whatever else. And so I could go in and I could fiddle with this and I could adjust like the parametric primitives. I could add like more geometry. I can change like the caps and all these kind of things that we're used to doing with 3D apps and Cinema 4D and stuff like that. And then if I want to, I can hold down on this thing and I could choose to make it sculptable or make it editable. And if I make it editable, I could go into, the polygons, and I can actually use my nifty Apple Pencil, my nifty expensive Apple Pencil, and I could just click and drag to select polygons, which is really cool. I could also double click on the lines here to create like loop selections, which is pretty fun. And so it becomes like, I don't know, like I was talking about with like tools, it makes a really big difference when I'm like interacting with them. I don't know, it's like, it's one thing to use your mouse and just be like, boop, boop, boop. But it's another thing to be like doing a thing like this and selecting polygons. I mean, you don't have to, the squat stance, power selecting stance is optional. But there's a lot of other cool tools here that I'll be getting to. I'm just gonna go ahead and delete this cube. You've served us well. Thank you. Take off. If I'm in the sculpting context, for example, there's a new thingy that I can do. Actually, you know what? I'm going to, okay. For the wings, for example, in the sculpting context, I have all these different tools. And if I scroll to the bottom here, then I have this new sketch tool. So if I'm going to make something like the gargoyle's wings, which are a little bit more of a complex shape, even if you're just going to like rough it out with primitives, it's a little rough. This new sketch tool allows me to like sketch, like I'm just going to go ahead, oh wait, I got to change this thing on the upper right. You see like there's a camera, and then there's this little thingy. So I don't want the camera. The camera just going to navigate me around. This little thingy is going to actually draw something. But now I can draw the shape. Can you see that at all? I could draw the shape of like a gargoyle wing. As soon as I let go, and go back to the camera tool, and then I have this nifty little thing. So then I could just immediately go and start sculpting on this. I'm just going to use the clay brush, and I can just start sculpting on this, blah, 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 whatever. So I can make this how I want it, and it's great for just quickly sketching out ideas or making like irregular shapes. A lot of times those little irregular shapes are kind of like background things. We don't want to spend a bunch of time on them, so this sketch tool is pretty fun. And then what I can do here, I could go over, I didn't set this up right. I should have set this up directly over an axis, and I didn't do that. But what I can do is go to this like symmetry menu. So there's a bunch of like symmetry options here, and I could click Make Symmetrical. And if I set this up right, I could have done X to X world and have that look good, but instead I didn't set this up on the right axis or at the right spot. But I can make symmetrical and make a quick copy, which is pretty fun. Okay, let's get to the art, some cinematography business. I'm going to open up this thing. And this is my project that I set up for the concept, just using the default camera focal length. And a lot of times people are new to CG stuff, and they see cameras, and they don't adjust the focal length. Because if you go and you adjust the focal length, whether you're in Cinema or Forger, doesn't matter, but like you click on this, and let's say I make the focal length like wider, it doesn't seem like it does really much. It just seems like it's zoomed out. So a lot of times in most projects, you seem like if you're just adjusting the focal length, it's almost like a zoom. But it's not at all like a zoom, because this is trying to replicate the optical qualities, the glass properties of a lens, which really change the characteristics of everything in our scene. So as we take the focal length, I'm going to go to this little arrow right here, and then get to my camera settings. But as we lower the focal length, we're creating a wider angle lens. And wide angle lenses tend to create more space, more apparent space between all objects. So as I reframe this, we get something, so again, it seems like I'm just zooming out, but it's not. If I zoom in closer, the way that the objects are going to relate to each other in the scene changes. And likewise, other way around, like when I increase the focal length, it's going to compress everything and bring things closer together. And another aspect of wide-angle lenses is that it tends to distort and warp things that are closer to the lens. So I kind of wanted this like weird, askew, creepy thing that it distorts as it gets closer to the lens. Like that's like part of the vibe that I wanted. And if I didn't adjust the focal length, if I just used zoom, I could never get this kind of distortion, this kind of like screwiness. It wouldn't happen. So this is real world cinematography tip number 1. And so I'm starting to get some kind of like weird angles. You can see like the wings are kind of like misshapen a little bit. There's a little bit of like distortion in like the body parts that are closer to the camera. And we're starting to get this kind of thing as well. We can push this further, but that's all I want to talk about for right now. One of the aspects that's really cool, and I can't show you because I can't see cinema right now, but if I go to this little export button at the top, right there, you see that? That little thingy? It's next to the model sculpt thing on the upper left. I have like these export options. So I could, render this out and I could make a 3D model, blah, 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 whatever. But the coolest thing is I could choose send to Cinema 4D. And then it goes to this thing and it's looking for Cinema 4D applications that are open are in the area. And so like if I was on the Mac and Cinema was open, then I would see it here and I could just like tap it and it just like sends it through the magic of magic to the computer, which is like really cool. And so that's how you can get stuff in your computer very, very quickly. So, and then of course there's like the new GoZ stuff in Cinema, which sends stuff to ZBrush. So it's a really quick hop and a jump just to be like, boop, send to Cinema, boop, send to ZBrush. So you can go from Forger to ZBrush with 2 boops. It's pretty cool. Okay, let's do something a little cooler in Forger. I'm going to go to this thing. I made this chandelier. In the final project, I put this little like platonic little turd in the background as a placeholder in case I had time to make a chandelier. And I'm proud to say that I actually made time to make a chandelier. That's totally the type of thing that I was just like, oh, I didn't have time for it. But I actually made the time to make this chandelier. And I need to change my camera here. But this is the chandelier I made from scratch in Forger. And as I made it in Forger, I was kind of like playing around with like a lot of the new features. I learned a bunch, and it was a good time. So I'm going to talk about some of the cool things that I used to make this, which I didn't plan on this, but most of the stuff that I used to make this were actually like new features that were just released a couple weeks ago. I didn't intend that, but just that's kind of the way it worked out because the features are really handy. First one I want to talk about is if you're in the modeling context. You remember the model sculpt dealie that we got? I'm going to be in the model context, and then the tools, there are these 2 new sweep and lathe tools. So sweep takes a profile spline and sweeps it along a path, and lathe wraps it something with like rotational symmetry, like around in a circle to create objects. So for example, if I click on sweep, and again, the same type thing that we saw earlier with the sketch tool in the upper right. I have this switched, I'm left-handed, so I have this switched. You can flip it to keep it normal if you want, but I'm not normal. So I'm going to go to here to this little thingy, and then as I click and drag, you can see that I wanted to create this kind of like spirally thingy, and then now I have this spirally thingy, which is like really cool. And I could go into these points and be like, actually, I didn't draw that great. I'm going to adjust these Bezier handles like so. I'm going to fiddle with this thusly. And I could tweak this in that way. Another thing I did is I went up and if you go to the top center there, like you see the little icon of the thing you have selected, and if you click on it, you get a bunch of options. You could transform it. There's all these, different things you could do to it. But if I go to curve, I can change this to linear. Oops, that didn't work. There we go. Linear, and then that's what I did on my final chandelier. So instead of having like this round, smooth profile, it's now like a diamond. So we have kind of like this faceted look, which is kind of fun. And then I could just go to this object here and hold down on this, and just as before, we can make it editable and fiddle with its polygons, its edges, its vertices, or we can make it sculptable and just start sculpting on it. So again, I'm a super huge fan of Forger for that reason. I'm going to skip a couple things. Ian and I are giving this presentation again tomorrow, so I got to leave some mysteries. Some mysteries for tomorrow. So then we also have the lathe. And if you used lathe before, you kind of make like a profile spline, and then it rotates around in 3D, which is really cool. Great for making like vases or fountains, baseball bats, things like that. And I love the way that this is implemented, because what happens is I first click to create the axis, like the main point, which could be anywhere. So it's kind of really cool. That's like my first starting point, which I think is great. And I'm just going to go ahead and draw like I guess I'll make a mushroom. Because mushrooms are like having a moment right now. It's not really related to Gothic anything, but it's a good way to. So here's like the outside of my mushroom, and then I go up, and then I'm going to go around and make the cute little mushroom butt. There we go. So then I go back to the camera, and look at how adorable like my little mushroom is, guys. For me, this is a huge accomplishment. So I could go in and I can like tweak this and make this like a little like a really great little mushroom very, very quickly, even like while I was presenting. Man, imagine if you weren't presenting, you just had like make a mushroom very quickly. So then I could add like materials to this and such. I'm just going to show you this very quickly. But I have like one little branch of my candle here. And, well, actually this is about the hierarchy thing that's just introduced. So if I go to my objects list, click the plus icon to add new stuff to my scene, we have, all these primitives, we have all these different lights that you can add, bunch of primitives. And we've recently added in July the ability to have hierarchies. So I can create a null object, and it's just like a regular null. And I could put things in that null, and then and that's kind of what I did here with my candle arm. I just built one candle arm, and then what I could do is duplicate this, or what I did do is like duplicate that, go to my transform tool, and then I could rotate this around, rotate the copies around. So that's how I made like the whole thing, and it's all like built into a hierarchy because of the nulls. So everything is like controlled independently, which is really fun. Okay, let me hop back over to Cinema. I'm going to stop mirroring. That worked out okay. Good job, Forger iPad mirroring connection. And let's talk about Gothic modeling a little bit more in depth. A little bit more stuff about stuff. First of all, let's talk about the Gothic Arch, the famed Gothic Arch, also called a pointed arch, which is really cool because it's actually created with circles, which I don't know, maybe everybody knows this, but I just thought it was like really interesting, and I didn't know if there's any rhyme or reason to it, but I'm just going to make a little circle. So I just click this little thingy, make a circle. I love the spline tools in Cinema. They're underrated. And I think they're fantastic. So I can go, I'm going to go in the X, and I'll just say 100 centimeters. So the size of the radius of the circle is 200. So I'm offsetting this 100, and then I'm going to control, drag another circle, and I'm going to say this one's position is negative 100. So in the opposite direction. So when you have this set up like that, where the center, or the side of one circle is perfectly aligned with the center of the other one, you get this football shape. And there's like sacred geometry, and people believe that geometry can do some mystical things. And this shape is called the Vesica Piscis, which is like a really powerful thing because it represents a lot. It's like two objects coming together, and then the center thing is like their union. So this is like the origin of the Venn diagram. So what we do then is we create something called a spline mask. There we go, spline mask. And I'm going to change my spline mask so that this is, I think that works. And then I'm going to change this to add. And then I put my circles in here. I guess and is not the thing that I wanted. XZ, that's right. I think I messed up. This is XZ. This needs to match. This is XZ. Okay, there we go. There we go. Okay, so now I have this like cool football shape. And you can see here, we just need to go ahead and split this, which I could do with another spline mask. I'm not going to do that for time, but I could create another spline mask and chop off that bottom, and then we have this beautiful pointed arch, which is really common in Gothic architecture. Now I have this open, actually. I'm going to go ahead and show you the final result. Actually, it'll be faster if I just showed you the final render here. So this is the final based on the concept drawing that I made in Forger, which which was difficult and had some challenges. And this is Ian Robinson's amazing gargoyle that he's going to show us how to sculpt in ZBrush in a second, which is like really exciting. And there's my cute little chandelier from Forger, make a little cameo in the background, which is really fun. And so, yeah. And so you can see like the Gothic arches over here. What's really interesting about this, and this gets into the Gothic element of this, the Gothic art of this. Like I have a lot of misunderstandings about what Gothic stuff is. I always thought it was formed in the 1990s with Hot Topic. Turns out it was invented years before that, several decades even before Hot Topic, which is very, very surprising to me. But I always think of Gothic stuff as like really dark and sinister. But in actuality, it was the opposite. Before Gothic stuff came in on the scene, there was Romanesque. And Romanesque, they kept making bigger and bigger buildings. And the problem with that is that in order to create these big buildings, they had to have these super, super thick walls to support the height of these big buildings. So then, because they had these super thick walls that they really needed, they were big load-bearing walls, then like their windows could only be like this little tiny thing, which it's like not enough for like birdies to like all look at the same time. They have to take turns looking in the church because that window is like so tiny, but they're taking out support for the structure by doing that, by making a window, so they can't have a very big one. So then what they started doing with Gothic architecture is they started having thin walls, and that allowed them to put windows all over the place. But then, the windows are kind of like dangerously precarious because they're rickety and they can't support these huge buildings. So they started having these things which were apparently named by an 11-year-old boy called flying buttresses. And these flying buttresses outside of the Gothic cathedral are like supporting it, which allows the walls to be thinner, which allows there to be like a lot more light, which is like really interesting. This is like some footage I took in Notre Dame in Paris of these things called rib vaults, which are the ceilings, which are that structure also allows you to have more support from the ceiling, which allows the walls to be thinner. This is also a poorly color profiled shot from inside of Notre Dame. But you could see like how much light there was. And, in an era like Benny Franklin and Tommy Edison, when there was no light bulbs, like if you were in this spot with if you're in this chapel doing stuff, trying to do your churchy business, I mean, like it's going to be like pitch black at high noon. You know what I'm saying? Like that is not going to be a pleasant experience. So the Gothic experience actually is full of light and vibrancy. And I don't know why, like what happened. Maybe it was Hot Topic. That kind of like transferred everything to like where we have this vibe that Gothic is evil. And actually the name Gothic is a misnomer in and of itself, because before the Gothic architecture came on the scene, like 1200, 1300, 1400, there had been this like siege by these barbarians, like the Goths, and they were just like seen as like savages. And so when Gothic architecture was actually called Gothic, it was like trash talk. It was just like, yeah, you're just like the Goths, man, you and your crude buildings. And so it was like trash talk, but then that's kind of what stuck for some reason. So there's that. Okay, let me move on here. I'm going to try to make up some time for everybody else that's kind of like behind. Let me go to my splines example. So we made this little football thingy. Just going to go ahead and delete that. Another thing that I did using these... Where's my... Oh. Got to make the, yeah, there we go. So using the same technique of creating like a diamond and then a bunch of circles and then smushing them together in the way that I showed you, like we created this, a little bit more complex shape that I took a little bit more time with. And then when you create a shape like this, then what you could do is put that into an extrude object. And I'll show you what that is, as you can imagine. And, oh yeah, I'm on the right thing. So then when you extrude it, then you get this like cool thing. Now here's a shape that's like a little bit like less detailed, and then it's a little bit more detailed on this other side. You can see kind of like the difference when, as I tried to do, just kind of like just go real fast and just like hurry up and just try to make something work really quick. Then you kind of have like a lot of like empty space that could be taken up with like more circles and things like that. And see, when you have a more complicated, complex profile like this, then you get all this like gorgeous detail once you extrude it, which is really fun. So then the next thing you could do is grab a bend deformer, like so. I've already kind of like set this up a little bit. And I cut that profile in half, so it's just kind of like a half thing. And then I could go to my bend deformer, and I could just be like, whoop. And so I could bend this. Then I could put this thing inside of what we call a symmetry object. And this little guy, symmetry object. And then basically I'm making symmetry with this thing. I don't think I'm using the right axis. No, I'm not using the right axis. Let's try it. Nope, that's not the right one. There we go. There we go. So now what I need to do is like move this bad dude. Oops. I need to move this bad dude. Oh yeah, it's on. Yeah, there we go. Sorry about that. There we go here. And then we have a beautiful Gothic arch created quickly and easily and beautifully. So that's how I made the arches in my little gargoyle scene. Now, let's talk about getting the stuff from ZBrush over into Cinema, because I learned some stuff here. I'm pretty ignorant when it comes to, oh, that was not the right way to do that. I double-click the tool to open ZBrush. Well, I'll open ZBrush, but then it'll come in a dumb way, right?
No, open up ZBrush, just gotta drag it out.
Okay. All right. Okay, thanks. Yeah, tech support.
I'm Ian.
Ian, the legend. The legend. Okay, so then I'm going to go, I need to go to load tool though, right?
No, give it a second.
Oh, I just had to give it a second. Okay, and then comma.
Here now it has so now drag it out. Just drag out
okay,
the face.
I'm going to click and drag. There we go.
Red wax. You got to shout out red wax.
Red wax.
Red wax, baby! All right, now you hit edit.
Edit, and there we go.
Now you're in sculpt.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Ian. That's great. See, I told you I suck at ZBrush, but like I'm learning, and this is new for me. So I could go into Subtool, and I click on Subtool and open up, and I see like all these things, a little orange, like scrolly bar thing, and I could see all these different components. So I can click on just this one, just this. Wait a minute, I don't want to draw anymore. Where's my? How come? What? Ian.
Okay. You're trying to just transfer it over?
I'm just trying to see just this guy.
Okay, so there's a solo mode, but it's not set up for this screen here. So
oh, okay.
Hold shift.
Okay.
And click the eyeball.
Okay. Oh, there we go.
And now you see how the eyeball's turned off? So if you click each one, it'll just hide that.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, so now I can look around my my little guy. And so what I did is I thought, okay, cool, now I got this, I can click Go Z and send this right to Cinema. And that is true, but if I do that, I'm just gonna make a new project so you can see what this does here. I can click Go Z, okay, and then oh, it's not installed. Oh, wait. Oh, it's not installed. It's not installed. Okay, fine. Okay, well, what would happen is that the model would come in at like a lower resolution. So what you need to do is go into, okay, there we go. Close up Subtool, go into Geometry, and then I need to increase the subdivisions, and then click Delete Lower, which deletes all the lower subdivisions. And then when I click Go Z, and I send this on to Cinema, then the thing that comes in is a more high-end, higher quality version of the file, which I didn't know. So hopefully someone out there also didn't know that and benefits from my ignorance and the things that I learned, which is like pretty fun. Okay. Next thing I want to talk about is another cinematography concept, because once I got the gargoyle from Ian, I needed to start kind of like setting everything up. So there's the gargoyle from Ian. So I'm going to go ahead and actually take note really quick. Take a mental picture of the proportions of this gargoyle, because I did something called cheating, which is really fun, and I'm going to explain that in a second. But this was the final composition here. Actually, I'll turn on my camera. So this is the final composition without materials and like lights and stuff like that. This is the final composition, and I love the way this looks. I'm really happy with the way that this, like the concept originally kind of became this. I'm really happy with it. But in order to get it to look like this, I had to do something called cheating. And we always talk about cheating in the graphics world. You know, we're always just like, oh, here's a quick way to do it. This is a cheat. But cheating when you're working on a film set is a very different thing. Like, you know, continuity is a really important part of filmmaking. Everything needs to be, like, if the light is here, then the next shot it needs to be there still. It can't just be like hopping around. It's got to be in the same exact spot. But sometimes, if it won't affect things and we could get away with it, then what's called we cheat. So it's like we showed the audience that something is one way, and then when they're not looking, we kind of tweak it a little bit, and that's referred to as cheating. So I have some examples of that. Here's like a movie that I did for a project for LinkedIn, learning on like big courses on filmmaking. And so in this shot, this little girl here in the center, is being discovered by all these townspeople. And that's like a bad thing. It's like a really intense thing. She's been hidden, and now they found her. So pay attention, like notice the difference in height between them. So I cut from this to a point of view shot of her point of view, and I want her to feel like intimidated by these people coming in over at her. But this is cheating, because in real life, we brought the camera down much lower than she was to create, oh my goodness. There we go. Okay, I hit the wrong button. So I wanted to create a more of a sense of like overwhelm, so I cheated that. And that's what we call cheating. So the camera should have been higher because that's, you know, she was higher than that. Like their heads are just not that high, but for the impact of that shot, we cheat it. And this is another shot where these three guys were all standing in the wide shot, but then I wanted to get this shot. And the only way to get this shot is to have that dude in the front sit down. So we cheated it. And we also cheat with lights. I don't know if you could see that very well at all. This is from a Hollywood movie, The Body Snatchers, with Boris Karloff and Lon Chaney, which is a really cool movie. But you could see Boris Karloff here standing, and you could see that the right side of his face is completely in shadow. There's like no light on the right side of his face at all. But when they go in for the reverse, they give him that Rembrandt lighting with the light on his cheek, because it just is a lot more flattering for reasons that I might go into in the next couple minutes. But the whole point is that we can cheat. We can go in and hopefully no one's paying attention to exactly where the lights are and where the light sources are coming from. And we can fiddle with that a little bit and cheat it so that we can get a more beautiful look. So what I did with the gargoyle scene is like I wanted this composition. But the thing is, in order to get this, I'm just going to get out of this thing, I had to tweak and cheat the wings. So the wings like are really distorted. They're in different places. They're at different heights. They're like, this one's like non-uniform scale. If you look at the chandelier is like totally tilted. It's pointed back. Even like the arches, I guess it's kind of hard to see, but the arches in the back are also askew and tilted like so. But when you put this all together, it works here. So I'm cheating in the sense that I'm taking these things, but because of the wide angle lens of the camera, it distorts things in such a way that if I didn't do this, then the gargoyle's left wing, you couldn't see it at all. So if it was like, if I was doing things by the book and not cheating, you couldn't see that wing in any way, and the composition just like felt really off. In the background, I also really wanted to start playing around with these lines. One of the things that I do, and this is like maybe a confession, I should save this for my therapist or something like that, but like the established workflow when you're doing 3D is that you build things in 3D, and then like you animate, and then you like apply materials and light and render like at the end of the process. But I find that I kind of cheat and do materials and lights like early on sometimes, because it influences the composition. Because, you know, if this stuff right here was all the same material, I can't really see these lines very well. But if I light this then those lines are like a little bit more apparent, and I could make design choices about where I'm going to put the camera and stuff like that. And so I don't know, for me, like I'm kind of like always doing all of the things all at the same time because they all influence each other. And if I change my composition to the point where I don't see one of his wings or maybe a tail in the back, then I can change my modeling stuff. I don't have to go through all this effort of modeling because it's like already, because the camera's not going to see it. So why am I going to put the effort into doing it? So I kind of like to balance all three of those things. But I mean, if you're in a collaborative workflow, that you can't do that. But if you're just working on your own, I don't know. Sometimes I do that, and I don't feel that bad about it, to be honest. Okay, let's look at the final deal here. I'm going to go and open up my last project. And there's one other thing that I want to talk about. This is a beast of a project. This is a beast of a project. So it might take a minute. But this is like kind of like the grand finale. I mean, it's not much of a grand finale. It's the finale. It's the end. But I just wanted to show this to you. I'm going to see if I can't get the IPR going. I'm kind of playing with fire here a little bit. It might take just a second, but I want to talk about something that I played around with a lot in terms of the composition and the lighting, and that is the staggering of light and dark. And that is kind of like a challenging thing to play with, and that really helps me like as I'm lighting stuff. And actually, maybe go to my slides, and we'll talk slide things. So here's like a Rembrandt self-portrait, for example, and you can see that like the background is light. Well, I don't know if you can see it. I'm kind of being presumptive there, but the background is lighter. His hat is like black, and then he has like a light part of his hair, and then for like no reason, a dark part of his hair, light part of his face in shadow, light, dark, and this is just like a very common thing. Like as we are lighting something, as we are like constructing a scene, as we're even like working with like materials and anything else, like this is what determines how a scene is going to be perceived. And the beauty of a scene is by the staggering of these lights, darks, light dark. So here's I Walk with the Zombie, which is a phenomenal movie if you've never seen it. But the same type thing here. We have a light area of his face. We have a dark area of his face. We have an edge light with an area of light. And then behind that is more darkness. And then there's more light and more dark and so on and so forth. But we have these like constant staggerings. If we were to like light his whole face from the front, then it would just be like light, and then it wouldn't be really beautiful. But we really get excited as human beings. We really get off on contrast. Boy, it's a thing of ours. We're into it. And so being able to like control the light where you're having appropriate lights and shadows makes a difference. There's body snatchers again. You can't really see this, but there's a black vertical strip right here. And so even though his face is completely in shadow, where his nose goes over the shadow area, the cinematographer took the time to light the edge of his nose so that it wouldn't be like a black nose on top of a shadow background. He lit just the edge of his nose so that it would be like a dark face over a light background and then a little light nose over a dark post. So it'd always be contrast and nothing was lost or receded into shadow, which is really, really incredible. And of course, like, Godfather is like counted as, this painterly gorgeous movie because we kept having, we keep having these shadows and light all over the place. It's just very, very well done. So you can see my final thing here. We have stuff illuminated on the edge of the wing, and then we have the inside of the wing. We have a little bit of like light from the background, kind of like illuminating the edge of this leg. I could have done a better job with this, I think. But you see that we kind of have like this staggering of like light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. And I like that aspect of how that turned out. So that is the final thing. And so thank you so much for being such a great audience. And there's me. And then also next is Ian Epic Gargoyle Sculptor Robinson. So stick around for that. Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, great job, brother. We have time for questions.
Whoa.
I know. I put you on the spot.
I didn't think about questions.
You didn't think about those. All right. Do we have any questions for Ian here live in person? Internet, I know you have questions. It's fine. You can find him. That's why he put up all of his socials. You can find him there. Also in the Maxon training team. Tune in. But yeah, any questions? Questions. I'm going to ask one.
Okay.
Is there any feature that you wish you would have known sooner? Is there any feature that you wish you would have known sooner?
That's a really good question.
All right, tune in next week for no.
That's a really good question. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but it feels like that all the time. Where like
every time.
Sometimes it's not even just a feature; it's an attribute of an existing feature. Like that may be a feature that I use all the time, but someone's like, "Oh, did you know this like option that you thought was super stupid actually does this really brilliant thing that would have bailed you out a billion times, and I didn't know."
Right.
So
that's like every menu or every sub-menu that I find. I'm like, wait, this is here the whole time?
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Ian will be available at the... Ian's up next.
Ian's up next,
yes. Folks. Chad will be available at the Dell booth for the next hour. So if you do have questions and you're a little too shy or you just couldn't think of it, check him out.
Yeah.
He'll be over there. So stay tuned. Next, you'll have Ian Robinson up next. So, woo! All right. See you right after the break.
Peace.